So I wind these two components out most of the way, and I normally just put a little wipe or a touch of helical grease in about 5 spots around the perimeter like this. You do not need to clog the threads entirely with grease unless the helical was unusually loose or worn. These ones don't do that. Just run that in. That action's nice and smooth. That excess I can take off there, I don't need that. Now I'll use the same grease in here where it's running on in the mount, and a touch in the slots where it runs on those two guide posts, and that should do. There's no front retainer ring because the mount here, the front focus front standard actually forms that retainer ring. I've got my 4 screws. Whoops, just drop one down into the body. It's not going to cause me any problem. That will shake loose very shortly. There we have it. The other four screw holes there are for the screws that hold the bellows to the back of the front standard, and that's the next track. Let's just check that that moves smoothly, or it does. It's good. So I'll push that back into the body and fit the 4 screws that hold the bellows to the front standard. The head on that particular screw is a bit rough looking. It must have had a hard life. I haven't got this extended right out on the struts, and I'm holding it in place with my fingers so that I'm not applying any pressure on the struts or bending the struts in any way while I'm pressing down firmly on the screwdriver to prevent it slipping. Alright, so there's our bellows all back in place and connected, and the focus mount's all assembled, and that just requires the focus scale ring, which of course I haven't even cleaned yet. So let's just do that. On the back of the focus scale ring here, you can see the marks where the screw heads have bitten in, and I can see there's 2 there close together, which means that it's been reassembled at some stage in a different position from where it started. I'm going to assemble this to the alignment marks that I made and check the focus after that. Once it's all assembled and going, make any adjustments as needed then. So the focus scale ring goes on here. The infinity position. In the infinity position, the knob on the focus scale ring is right around there at about the 7 o'clock position. On later cameras like the Type 010s and later, that was round here at the other side. And there are 4 small screws that hold this in place. My alignment mark is there. And when the focus helical is all clean and lubricated correctly, these screws do not need to be very tight at all in order to do their job. And over tightening them just leads to things being distorted and making the action unduly stiff. So I'm just checking my alignment mark here again before I nip those screws up. Often the screws have left an indentation in the ring and they will pull themselves into line as you nip them up anyway. That's it. Yeah, I can see a second mark here. That was where that screw head had been at one stage in its life. Okay, that action. It's smooth. It's quite firm. It's certainly smooth in its action. Let's try check those screws so I haven't over tightened them. No, that's fine. Anytime you've got a viewfinder camera, it doesn't hurt to have some resistance on the focus scale, and that it helps you avoid accidentally bumping the focus scale as you hold the camera up to your eye. With a rangefinder camera, it's better to have the focus scale relatively easy to move, because you are using one finger to adjust it as you hold the camera up to your eye. You're not having to set it and hold it back down again. So that's all good. I'm happy with the state of that. And that can have the door put on the front there now, which means I've got to go and find 2 screws because I was short one to start off with, and then I very cleverly broke off the other one trying to get it apart. I'll find the screws and check that they fit, because there's a bit of doubt about the thread in there. I have 2 screws ready to go. I'll put some grease in the slots at the front here, the guide slots on the struts, and in these ones where the arms on the front door run. And I should be able to hook the front door into place, stretch it over, and clicks into position. Now there's a big return spring on this door on a Retina I Type 126, so I'm going to hold that down out of the way with a steel rule so that it doesn't scratch the body as I swing this down into position. That's the theory. But what's the practice? That's it. It's in place. Right, it's always a bit of a fight, that thing. So I've got 2 screws here. That's running nicely. The other one's running. Is there catch uncatch? Is that door too distorted? Looks like it might be. That door is certainly bowing out at the middle there. It's yeah, it is. It's bent. Look. And it's catching on the body, I would say. Alright, I'll give that a little bit of body English and we'll see how we get on. Oh. Might need a thump with something. Yeah, it just needed some assistance by the most important tool in anyone's toolbox. Now it opens and shuts. Right, well that was pretty much the headline problem for this particular camera, apart from the fact it needed a service. So I can continue on and closing this thing up. And I want to work, I'll put that tripod socket in there, get the leather on the base next, and it'll start looking more like a camera every second. There are 3 screws holding the tripod socket in, and one of them I can see is an ugly one because the screw slot is off to one side. So it's just as well that's going to be covered up with leather and no one will have to worry about that. The tripod socket here would be chromed brass, I think. Later cameras used aluminium and it was not a good move. They stripped out, got damaged, all sorts of exciting things. Where's my piece of leather? That's all clean and ready to go back on. I've been over generous there. Some of the leather's soaked it up like a sponge and the rest of it is not. Let's get some of that excess off. That's that. Just get that piece of paper out the way. Now where the leather goes over that chrome button for the front release, you don't want any adhesive sticking the leather to that chrome button. Chances are the leather has shrunk somewhat and wants to grab the leather anyway. So I've just put a smear of grease around the centre of that where it goes over that button, and that will stop that problem from occurring. Just rub that with my finger and get that adhesive, excess adhesive off that surface. Check that that's all pressed down firmly into the recess on the top of the body. Now round a boss like this here on the tripod socket, the leather is because it shrinks back, it doesn't want to pull down over areas like that. You've got to press it down firmly. There we have it. There's the leather back on. And I need to put the the depth of field calculator back on there, which of course I haven't cleaned yet. Just give that a wipe. the other components of this have been through the cleaner, but this lot hasn't, because anything with paint on it can't go through the ultrasonic cleaner because it's exceptionally good at stripping paint. Unless you wanted to strip paint, in which case it wouldn't. This is a bit clogged up with dirty old grease and dust. Get this nice and clean. Not that the depth of field scale needs to rotate at high speed or anything. That's good. This little plate goes on there. The spring just requires a touch of grease at the high spots, really, that wavy washer, and it sits on there. Well, you can't see any of that, sorry about that. Here's the turning disc, and here's the fixed component. Get that lined up with the holes. There we have it. There's our depth of field calculator back in place. And the camera can be flipped over now because all the work needs to be done on the top. I can put the take-up spool in place. I'll put some synthetic grease on this leaf spring in the back of the camera. I'll give a wipe round the inside edge of that spool and drop that into position. The bush at the top of the camera, I'm just lubricating that. Again, I'm using just the synthetic grease. Put the film advance shaft through there, check that that moves smoothly. Check that it engages with the slot in the top of the take-up spool. And that's held in position with 3 screws. Those 3 screws in position, I can tighten them up. And check that that revolves smoothly, and it does. That's good. Now the sprocket shaft, just get the pieces for that, and of course there's 2 tiny screws that need to go in there, which I've carefully put somewhere else. Hopefully I can find them. There and there. And I'll just put a little bit of grease in the camera housing at the top. At the bottom we've just got the pocket at the bottom here where that shaft sits into. I'll put a smear of grease in there. Shaft drops in from the top. we have a spacer washer, and I'm not sure that it's that one. Just check that. Is it that one? Spacer washer. Was it that way up or was it the other way up? So look at something. Yes, that's right. At the bottom it's just a roller. That should drop down into the recess in the body. Now getting this lined up with a hole in the shaft, right there. And drop one of those tiny screws in there and run it up. Fortunately I've just managed to find the right screwdriver. Oh, just drop that one. Let's pick up another one. That's good. That bites right into a little hole in the shaft so that you know exactly where it's going to go. Let's get that other screw out. That can go in here. Yeah, finding that hole is always a bit tricky. It's got to be somewhere around there. Of course the screw runs in easily once it finds the hole. There it is. That's it. So that's our sprocket shaft in place. Take up spools in place. Plain washer goes on there. Now with the two ratchet wheels, it's always a bit of drama figuring out which one goes where. Now this is the lower one, and that goes that way, so its ratchet wheel must go that way. Okay. And these wheels, they've got flats on them, here and here, where they engage with the flats on that shaft. And they do not particularly want to go on easily, typically. Yeah, that's not bad. And that was the lower one, so I'm not just checking that the action's the right way around. Yes, that locks in that direction. The second plain washer goes on there, and this ratchet wheel goes in the opposite direction. So it's going that way. and I'll just put that spacer washer on the top and see if I can run the advance knob down on there, see if it'll press that a lot of wheels down firmly on the shaft, which means I need to put the spanner back in there, and I'll probably carefully put that away. Alright, crank that down. Yes, that pulled those things up. That looks good.